Welcome everyone to The Secrets of Stargate Egypt, the original mystery school with William Henry. William has been called a real-life Dr. Robert Langdon of the DaVinci Code. The author of 17 books and numerous DVD presentations, he specializes in the ascension teachings of all ages and traditions. In 2013, he was given a Lifetime Achievement Award by George Noory of Coast to Coast AM. He appears regularly on the hit History Channel TV series Ancient Aliens, and you can find out more about his work by going to williamhenry.net. It is a great pleasure for Great Mystery to welcome William Henry. So thank you, William, for being here with us.
Thank you. My pleasure, Robin, and thank you, everybody, for being here. So, welcome to Stargate Egypt, everybody. Our presentation begins with a simple desire to decode the mysteries of ancient Egypt. I'm encouraging you, as I know you are, to approach these mysteries with an open heart, with an open mind, with a sense of adventure, especially, because we're going to be going in and out of some passageways today that perhaps you've been down before, or perhaps not. Either way, we're going to put some new light on these passages and hopefully clear open a pathway for you towards your ultimate attainment, which is what we're looking for: self-realization, ascension, even enlightenment. So we're going to be focusing on and contemplating a lot of Stargate art today, images of or photos that I've taken from temple walls, or images I've pulled from various Egyptian texts that help to give us this tunnel vision into these ancient mysteries. These presentations will feature insights that I've gathered on various tours of ancient Egypt, and I want to offer a thanks to all the people that have supported those tours over the years. It's because of them that I've been able to get my boots on the ground and do this research, and so I'm certainly honored by them and thankful for their assistance, their contribution, and the energy that they've helped pour into helping us to reveal these mysteries. This introduction today doesn't pretend to expose by any means all aspects of Stargate Egypt in detail. I mean, there's just no possible way we can do that. Even if we spent a lifetime after lifetime studying Egypt, it's difficult for us to say that we'd actually be able to master the entire ancient Egyptian mystery catalog of knowledge that's there, that's awaiting our discovery. But what we're going to do today is kind of present sort of a panorama that's going to take us into the mystery, and as I said, hopefully illuminate your path or bring some additional light into the adventure that you're already on. I want to dedicate this presentation to the people of Egypt. My heart, as I know many of yours, has gone out to these people who have stepped forward quite bravely and proclaimed themselves freedom fighters. They had their Arab Spring. My wife Claire and I and a group of people were there during the revolution, during the Arab Spring, and I can personally attest to their courage and their determination to bring freedom to their people. The Egyptians are just like everybody else. They just want more time with their family. They want to love their family. They want to, as many of us do, want to help the next generation to be better than the one before. And I encourage everybody and applaud everybody who supports the Egyptian people in their quest to step forward, because it's my heartfelt belief that, as happens with Egypt, will happen with the entire planet. So let's take a step forward now into the place of ascension, Egypt. What most people don't realize is that one of the ancient names for ancient Egypt was Mera. It meant the land of waters. Literally, Ta Meri means place of Mr, and Mr has been interpreted as a canal or a waterway. This idea of the canal or waterway is a primary theme that we're going to be developing, because we're going to begin to view Earth as a port on the great galactic waterway. And we're going to be talking about the Egyptian gods as beings who are coming and going from other star systems, who are traveling via these galactic waterways, and perhaps came here in an effort to set up a a culture, a civilization on Earth, and to make sure that the Earth civilization would be able to have access to these cosmic waterways. When we look at the hieroglyph of MR, it's actually a pyramid. It's also a vibrating string, an owl, and a pillar or a post with the Egyptian hieroglyph for eternity attached to it. Egyptologist Mark Lehner has stated that the ancient Kemetian term for pyramid was something he calls MR.pyramid. Of course, another name for ancient Egypt was Kemet, which means the black land, and so Egypt was called Kemet, and the people were the Kemetians. And of course, this is the word that later becomes the foundation for our words alchemy and ultimately chemistry. Getting back to the MR.pyramid interpretation, Lehner bases his translation of MR as instrument or place of ascension. And I really like that definition because it tells us ultimately, I believe, the purpose of the pyramids and also of ancient Tom Mary. It was a place of ascension where people came to learn to transform into celestial beings and re-navigate or resail upon the canals or waterways linking Earth with the cosmos. The ascension that is referred to here is a metaphysical one. It's a consciousness one, but it's also literally a physical one. The pyramid texts speak of a metaphysical journey of the soul on the way through what the ancients called the duat, to reach the afterlife. It's my belief that everything that we see in ancient Egypt relates to this journey and to ascension, including and especially the pyramids. The five-pointed star with a circle was the Egyptian symbol of the duat. The duat is literally viewed as a stargate between birth, life, and death. It's the beginning and end of our journey within this physical octave in which we presently dwell, in this vibrational spectrum that we are presently inhabiting. The ancient Egyptians believed that the soul of the deceased came to reside in the heavens as a star. And this is our primary metaphor. We're all about this transformation from an earthly being into a celestial or a star being, from a being of flesh to a being of light. And if the soul passed all the tests that it would encounter in the duat or the journey to the netherworld, then the soul would become one with Osiris or Sopar, who is the lord of the duat, and would live forever in the night sky as a bright star. So right away, we're expanding our consciousness and recognizing that as we look into the heavens and see these stars, that they're actually potentially cosmic beings, conscious entities, and perhaps even transformed humans. And of course, this belief that a human could become a star is foundational to not just the ancient Egyptian metaphysics, but also to the metaphysics of numerous spiritual traditions. We'll talk about a couple of those as we continue later today. The duat is a psycho-spiritual state as well as a physical space that lies between heaven and hell, between earth and paradise, between sleep and spiritual illumination. In Christianity, it's sometimes called purgatory. But it was the Egyptians that provided the most detailed and practical descriptions of this spiritual journey ever recorded. Especially during the 18th dynasty, we received what was the first complete version of the Book of the Duat. It appeared in the tomb of Tutmosis III in the Valley of the Kings. And painted on the walls of the tomb in hieroglyphs and highly symbolic pictures, we see the myth of Ra's night voyage through the duat as he journeys through 12 hours or 12 gates into the afterlife. The key image that we see in this book of gates, as it's also called, is the image of the boat, especially the dual-headed serpent boat. Now, this is a very fascinating image, one that initially perplexed me and then later became foundational to the work I was doing in ancient Egypt. In Egyptian symbolism, the soul was placed on a boat. It was led by a navigator, and the boat would literally be the soul's instrument for the exploration of the duat. So what I started to do was to collect various images that showed this journey into the afterlife, the journey into the duat, the netherworld, with our ultimate goal being what's called the field or dimension of the blessed. For example, we're looking at this image here from Spell 110 of the Book of the Dead that illustrates the soul's journey in the afterlife. We see several registers with canals or waterways in between the registers. And as we come into the detail, we see a dual-headed serpent ship rising out of the waters with a stairway to heaven attached to it. This, to me, is the primary symbol of the ancient Egyptian Stargate metaphysics, because the ancient Egyptians understood that the sky was traversed by water and the deceased, the awakening soul, traveled by boat. And so the Egyptians would illustrate this journey by boat in this manner here. Now, take a look here at the dual-headed serpent ship with the stairway to heaven and begin to kind of think in your imagination, what kind of a boat could we actually be talking about that the soul can travel into the afterlife realms, indeed into the stars upon? What sort of a boat are we talking about? A star boat? A celestial boat of some kind? I started, again, continuing my collection of these images and noting sometimes the utter simplicity of it, but recognizing the very complex teaching that, excuse me, is in fact enfolded in these diagrams of the soul's afterlife journey. Once again, we see the dual-headed serpent ship rising out of the water with the stairway to heaven attached to it. In this example here, next to the dual-headed serpent ship, again rising out of the water, we also see a throne attached. This will become another key image that we're going to discuss as we continue today. So continuing, we find more examples of the dual-headed serpent ship, the waterways. I'm repeating this so you can get a sense of the importance of this imagery to the ancient Egyptians. This is how they viewed the afterlife, views the soul's ascension and progression as a celestial being or a star being, always featuring the craft or the boat that takes us into the heavenly realms, showing us doing fairly simple things, harvesting, but ultimately riding with the celestial ones as a star being or a celestial being into eternity on what is also referred to as the ship of eternity. Another example here where we see Osiris wrapped in the afterlife cloak or garment of light. Yet another example here with the arcing goddess Nut above. We see this figure on the boat with the feather of Mot, indicating that his heart at Judgment Day had been weighed against the feather, and that having been found lighter than the feather, the soul is then able to progress or continue on its path of spiritual evolution. Ra aboard the boat of eternity. The way to heaven, as I stated earlier, was to become a star or a celestial being and then ride for eternity upon these canals or waterways, these celestial canals, as a star being upon the ship of eternity. Looking at this example here from the Egyptian Book of the Dead, we see Ra aboard the ship of eternity. We see the image of the sun aboard the ship, giving us the understanding that this boat is also called the sun boat. But at the front of the boat, we also see, curiously and very interestingly, a ladder or a stairway, yielding the picture that this star boat or ship of eternity is actually the same as the ladder or stairway to heaven. Another example, Ra aboard the ship of eternity prepares to sail into a gate of stars. As I started collecting these images and looking at them, I just came upon an insight or recognition. Wait a minute. The way the ancient Egyptians portrayed the ship of eternity or the arc of the millions of years precisely matches the way modern science portrays a wormhole. When I first started talking about this, I have to admit it was kind of a bizarre idea, especially to the guides in Egypt. I would go to the temples with them and start showing them all this imagery of how the ancient Egyptian starboat or sunboat, the ship of eternity, matches the way modern science portrays a wormhole. And it actually kind of laughed me off. Well, as years went by, and I've kept going back and bringing more information to the guides, I'm happy to say that they've started to incorporate this dialogue into their presentations in the temple. I know this because actually someone on my recent France tour was just in Egypt with a guide who was talking all about the starboat equals wormhole connection and was very excited about it. So that tells me that, hey, I think we're making some progress here, that we've made a very valid connection that perhaps these ancient Egyptian gods, the celestial beings, the star beings, traveled the canals and waterways of eternity aboard what we today call wormholes. And this is what NASA is attempting to recreate today. In this image on the left, we see an image from NASA's 100-year Starship program, which is devoted to building a warp craft. They believe that we'll be able to open stargates or wormholes and travel the stars within 100 years. And as we look at the cartoon on the left of NASA's image of the warp craft going through the wormhole and compare it to the image from the Egyptian Book of the Dead, I see a striking similarity. I see these two cartoons telling exactly the same story. An ark or a ship is traveling through a gate into another realm of the cosmos, or perhaps even another dimension altogether. But as I've stated in my blog and have stated for years as I've been investigating the connection between these images and the possibility that we are recreating this technologically today, I always tell people from NASA the only way we're going to be able to kick in our warp drive is by first kicking in our spiritual drive. Because the ancient Egyptians were quite clear that flesh and blood can't inherit the kingdom of heaven, as the Bible says as well. There is a transformation that is undergone preparatory to riding upon the ark of the millions of years or the ship of eternity. And that preparation involves us morphing into a light being, into a star being. And this is the very basis of ancient Egyptian Stargate metaphysics. So actually, since 2004, I've been cataloging images of Osiris, for example, star walking or surfing on his boat as a regenerated or born again being of light, a star being, and comparing them to modern depictions of the starboats scientists call wormholes or stargates that theoretically enable travel through the galaxy and even to parallel universes. In my opinion, the connection is eye-popping and it's perfect. And in my view, what this is saying is that because we are able now to understand the potential meaning of this, that these are celestial beings traveling wormholes, it must mean that human consciousness has been elevated, especially within the past 50 years or so, and that we are now able to apprehend this symbolism. And not only are we able to apprehend it, we are perhaps on the verge of being able to duplicate what the ancient Egyptians said their celestial gods were able to accomplish. The metamorphosis from flesh into light, and even back again if we so desire. So here we're comparing an image from the Temple of Hathor at Dendera of the resurrected Osiris as a celestial being riding aboard or actually surfing upon his ship of eternity, which matches the way modern science portrays a wormhole. So this is a fantastic and fascinating connection that I made all those years ago that has continued to absolutely engross me and to captivate audiences on my tours and in presentations and elsewhere, to think that we are on the verge of duplicating this science. And again, here's a NASA illustration of a warp craft entering the mouth of a wormhole and perhaps traveling across the galaxy or even interdimensionally. And in my view, when modern science is talking about the wormholes, this is something that the ancient Egyptians already knew about and encoded in their metaphysics, on the temple walls, in their artwork, in their texts. And the key, again, is that the difference between the ancients and the moderns is that the ancients understood that in order to access these stargates and wormholes, a transformation is necessary. And what we're trying to get at in these presentations over the next couple of days is, how do we do that? What do we need to do in order to climb aboard the ship of eternity? What knowledge do we need? And how can we reclaim that knowledge? That's our ultimate objective. So let's talk about the gateway to the Duat. Let's focus specifically on the entranceway to the Duat, which was actually the Sphinx. Up here, the earth god is shown here in the form of the double Sphinx, was the entrance to the Duat, into that afterlife realm of those canals and waterways. And the Sphinx is the guardian of that gateway. In the Book of Gates, again from Tutmosis III's tomb, we see Ra, once again, as a winged serpent, or aboard the winged serpent, in between the Aker symbol of the two sphinxes. This is believed to be an actual, literal location, the Sphinx in Giza Plateau Complex, as we'll see in just a moment. And the Aker, or the Aket, as it's also called, is more than just a zone of passage. It's literally the place of becoming an Ak, which is the combined life force, spirit, and soul, where the deceased Ba, or soul, and the sun, cosmic energy, together are transformed into a newly effective mode of existence called the Ak. Now, what we see in this vignette from the Book of the Dead is a very key piece to our puzzle here. We see the Aker lions on either side of the gate, with the sun disk in the center of the gate. And above the sun disk, we see the Egyptian hieroglyph for heaven. And the way we read this cartoon is that the sun is the way to heaven. And this reinforces the ancient Egyptian belief that our sun was in fact a sun tunnel, a star tunnel, or what we can even stretch it to, a star gate. And here we're looking at the Sphinx as the gateway that leads through the sun tunnel, or star tunnel, or stargate to heaven. Jeremy Narby writes that in the coronation text of Tutmosis III, the king was infused with the luminous spiritual power, the Ak power, of the sun god in a mystical experience of union with the mysterious essence of the Lord of light and life. This solarization, as he says, of the king was an important initiatory event that was undergone not only at this initial coronation, the initial coronation of the king, but also in subsequent coronation ceremonies, particularly those of the Sed festival, which we're going to talk about here in a moment. The king was therefore more than just Ra's representative on earth. He mystically embodied the solar principle. And as the king flies up to the sky to worship Ra in the ceremony, he is filled with his Ak power, with his spiritual power that was believed to emanate from the sun itself. This is a subject we're going to talk about in tomorrow's presentation, where we focus on the ascension mysteries of Tutankhamun and Akhenaten. The ancient Egyptians understood that to become enlightened, one must become aware of that which is cosmic in one's own nature. There's something deep within us that is not of this earth, that is cosmic in origin. And it is this part of ourself that responds to the imagery, that responds to the artwork, that I believe, in fact, is called back to ancient Egypt in perhaps lifetime after lifetime in order to complete its quest to become a celestial or star being once again. And it's quite clear that the Sphinx is the primary place that we want to return to. It literally is the gateway. In this image of the Sphinx, we see a couple of important things. We see an altar stone, a red granite altar stone that is, to me, one of the most powerful places in all of ancient Egypt. The vibration that you feel from this altar stone is actually just, it's palpable and it's astounding. We also see in between the paws of the Sphinx another red granite stone that indicates that this is the place where Tutmosis IV had a famous dream involving the Sphinx, in which he too saw the gate to heaven. And it's thought by some that the Sphinx and this enclosure itself literally marks the gateway to heaven. Or if not the gateway itself, certainly the entranceway to the gateway of heaven. When you talk about seeking the hall of records, the ultimate halls of records that we're seeking are the holes in space that the ancient Egyptians knew how to open and indeed how to navigate. And to me, this is the ultimate knowledge of ancient Egypt. This is why we gathered together here. And this is, to me, again, the power pack, the magnetic stone, if you will, that draws us back to ancient Egypt. It's connecting with that very deep cosmic part of ourself that can simply engage this imagery and learn from it and be awakened by it. So here's the altar, excuse me, the stone depicting Tutmosis, or commemorating that, or Tutmosis IV dream. We see the two lions, the Aker lions on either side, representing the gateway to the Duat, the gateway into the afterlife, and telling us the Sphinx is ground zero for our search. This is why when we do tours of ancient Egypt, we always begin with the Sphinx, always begin with the pause of the Sphinx to reconnect with this energy there. And by the way, I'm very happy to announce that we will be going back to Egypt in March of 2014, and I'll have details about that tour available soon. Here's a line drawing of the commemoration stone in between the paws of the Sphinx that shows the two Aker lions. You see that they're resting upon what appear to be chambers. And in some people's opinion, these literally represent the chambers beneath the Sphinx, the chambers that yield access ultimately to the Hall of Records. This takes us back to the work of Spencer Lewis, who in his book on the Sphinx and Pyramid Prophecies provides this diagram here where he shows in his visionary drawing here a reception chamber underneath the Sphinx, along with secret stairways that lead to a circular temple, and with hidden doors where we find passageways leading to the Great Pyramid. I think it's quite possible that this is actually true, that there are these actual chambers and temples beneath the Sphinx, and certainly passageways that link the Sphinx with the Great Pyramid. Back around 2006, I commissioned the artist Dana Augustine to create a visualization, a visionary piece of art showing what might the Sphinx and Pyramid complex have looked like in its original state. We know that there was a canal or a waterway from the Nile that flowed in front of the Sphinx, and that you could actually access the Sphinx and Pyramid by boat. And what an astounding experience that must have been. Perhaps some of you have a memory or a recollection of that experience. And I know that I've been to Egypt with many people who do have crossover memories. It's actually happened to me where I'll be walking along in a temple and I'll look down and the feet I see are not my physical feet in this life. They are feet from another lifetime. And it's quite an alarming experience when it happens for the first time, because you're not quite sure what's going on. You feel like you're blending or crossing over dimensions or time periods. And indeed, that's a big part of the experience in Egypt is crossing over time and indeed dimensions. So I thought Dana did quite an amazing job here of visualizing the Sphinx enclosure and temple, the waterway, and the pyramid. You note the detail where he's got the white casing stones on the pyramid. They, of course, were covered with Tura limestone, and upon the Tura limestone was etched the wisdom of ancient Egypt. But then you get the modern perspective that says there are no hidden tunnels or chambers under the Sphinx. There are no real mysteries of ancient Egypt. And of course, when you come upon the traditionalist view of ancient Egypt, it's very different from the spiritual or metaphysical view. And I'm hoping that what will happen in Egypt with the changing of the guard is that there will be a renaissance of ancient Egyptian studies, particularly the spiritual aspect of these studies, and that once and for all, these ancient mysteries will really begin to come to the light. And on that subject, we have to comment just how fortunate we are to be able to go to Egypt today and to connect with these temples, to have the ability to travel, to have all the satellite imagery that we have that can penetrate the sands of Egypt and tell us what's there. I mean, as Dr. Halas has said so many times, we only are seeing a small percentage on the surface of what we know is actually there. The vast majority of ancient Egypt is still buried beneath the sands. So if you were Napoleon in 1798 or in the early 1800s visiting the Sphinx, this is what you would have seen, which is a far different scene from what we experience today. And in fact, today we have not only the benefit of satellite imagery, but also air travel, or the ability to get high in the air through airplanes. Aerial photography started to really open up the bird's eye view of the Giza Plateau. This is a photo from November 1904. And as we look at the detail here, in the very center of the image, in fact, is the Sphinx. I'm going to highlight it here for you. It's almost completely buried. You can't see a thing when you're looking on the Giza Plateau. And you just think back about what we've discovered just in the past 100 years about ancient Egypt, how much of this has really opened up to us. And it tells us that now is the time for truly the revelation of these mysteries. So this is an amazing photo. I'd love to show this on my tours because, again, very often the guides that we use on the tours will sit in on the presentations. And this one in particular is one that they always ask me for a copy of because they're just so blown away by the panoramic view that we see here of the Sphinx, the Valley Temple in front of it, all of the excavations going on beneath the sand. In between the Sphinx, you see the causeway going up to the second pyramid. It's truly breathtaking to contemplate what is actually still underneath the sands here that is awaiting discovery. This is why I say to myself over and over when I'm at the pyramids, tell me your secrets. I ask them because I know that the spirit and the energy of the place is still there. I know that these temples, these magnificent monuments, hold the secrets of humanity, the true secrets of eternity. And as I said, now we have not only aerial photography, now we have satellite images where we are now beginning to penetrate the sands of Egypt, and we're discovering literally hundreds of pyramids in the pyramid fields around the Giza Plateau. It's almost beyond our comprehension what is underneath the sand there and what is now being revealed to us today. In the 1950s, Kodak lit up the pyramids, the Great Pyramid, for this stunning photo. It's one of my favorites, actually, because I always think of the Great Pyramid as a lighthouse, and literally it is portrayed here as a lighthouse. I remember one time reading in Zecharia Sitchin's books about his belief that the Anunnaki were responsible for building the pyramids. And in part, Sitchin said the pyramids were built as a landing beacon. And I thought, gosh, that's going to a lot of trouble to build a landing beacon. And I remember him saying that the gods, as the Anunnaki descended upon Earth, they would see the pyramids, that the sun would catch the shiny white Tura limestone on the facing stones of the pyramid, and you'd see this flash of light. And one time I was flying home to Nashville from Los Angeles, and we were over Memphis, Tennessee, flying at about 36,000 feet. And you probably know that Memphis has a glass pyramid. It's a convention center. They built it in the early 90s. And we're flying over Memphis, and all of a sudden I look out, and I'm blinded. I look out the window, and I'm blinded by this light. I'm like, what in the world is that? Then I realized it was the sunlight flashing on the glass panels of the pyramid in Memphis. I thought, wow, man, Sitchin really could have been actually right about what he was saying. It was a really stunning example of how something you read suddenly comes to life. According to present-day Egyptology, the Great Pyramid of Giza was allegedly called the Akhet Khufu and allegedly meant the horizon of Khufu. Many people believe that that's wrong. E.A. Wally Budge notes in the Egyptian Hieroglyphic Dictionary that the title of the Great Pyramid was actually Aku, or Akut, meaning light. Now, this is very important for us to follow, because if we follow this word Akut, we're led to some very interesting connections. First of all, In Budge's Egyptian Hieroglyphic Dictionary, the word Akut means beings of light or wise instructed folk. Graham Hancock and Robert Laval also explain in their book, The Message of the Sphinx, that the hieroglyphs of Akut can also mean transfigured beings, shining ones, or shining beings. So, wait a minute. We're saying that the Great Pyramid is called Aku, which means light. And that same word, Aku, also means beings of light or wise instructed folk. In fact, transfigured beings or shining ones. There are ancient Egyptian myths, they're called the Edfu texts, that tell of the creation of the original mound of creation in Egypt by beings of light. And it really makes you wonder if, in fact, the ancient Egyptian civilization, if we take their mythology at face value, was founded by these celestial star beings or light beings, beings of light, who were, in fact, wise, instructed folk. In Budge's Hieroglyphic Dictionary, the following additional definitions of Aku are provided. It means to be bright or be excellent, to be wise or instructed, in addition to be bright, fine, splendid, glorious, excellent, and good. We all know that the Great Pyramid is a place of instruction. It's like the great test of all humanity to fully decode the Great Pyramid, something we've yet to do today. We are still on the path of becoming wise, instructed folk and knowing exactly how the shining ones, the wise ones, actually built the Great Pyramid and all of the other pyramids for that matter. Were they literal beings of light, or are they illuminated beings, meaning they are awakened or enlightened beings, having radiance and splendor? That's something we kind of have to decide for ourselves. But what I'm going to be talking about as we continue is that indeed the ancient Egyptian Stargate Metaphysics was about the transformation of humans into these radiant, glorious, wise, and instructed beings. So there is a good argument to be made that they are literally beings of light that came to Earth from other star civilizations and are here to connect Earth and our civilization to the star canals or star waterways. So I've gone about in my travels collecting various images of the hieroglyph of the Aku, the wise or instructed folk. They appear, of course, over and over again throughout the temples of ancient Egypt. But something that fascinated me as I was studying this was the connection between the hieroglyph for the wise instructed folk and the Egyptian hieroglyph for backbone, or indeed the spine. Well, searching for this glyph, I found the Egyptian word for back and the word for spine as shown here. It's the Egyptian word pest, which means back or backbone. And as we see here, and again in this page from Budge's Egyptian Hieroglyphic Dictionary, we see the hieroglyph for to shine and to illumine, and then we see the glyph for backbone or the vertebrae. In the final entrance, that's it, we see next to it the 7 magical knots that protected a man. This is the basis that the ancient Egyptians knew about the chakras. And they knew about awakening the chakras that dot our backbone or our spine and becoming illuminated beings. Controversial idea. There's some scholars, especially Egyptologists, say that the Egyptians knew nothing about the chakras, they knew nothing about activating the illuminated body. But I beg to differ, and we're going to continue to see evidence that, in fact, this is the very basis for the ancient Egyptian Stargate Metaphysics. An important through line for us is to note that this imagery, this hieroglyph of the wise instructed folk, later appears in Christianity. It actually appears in the transfiguration images of Jesus. And remember, the word Aku means wise instructed folk, but it also means shining beings or transfigured beings. I happen to be in the Coptic church, the Egyptian Christian church in Aswan, Egypt, one time, and I took a look at this incredible image of the transfiguration of Jesus, and my jaw just about hit the floor, because we see Jesus in the Egyptian glyph for the wise instructed folk, or the Aku, we also see the nemesis crown of the pharaohs, especially of the 18th to 21st dynasty, showing behind him. The message is clear. And in fact, the connection was made for me on one of my first trips to Egypt. I was walking around with a guide, and he kept telling me that Christianity is the ancient Egyptian religion. And he repeated this several times. Christianity is the ancient Egyptian religion. And I kept saying, no, it's not. I mean, Christianity is completely unique and separate from ancient Egypt. No, it's not, it turns out. Actually, what he meant to say is that Christianity is the ancient Egyptian religion with the names changed. And in fact, as I have done in other presentations and will do in a limited way here, when we follow the path of Jesus, the so-called flight to Egypt, when Jesus spent his youth in Egypt, we are following the path of esoteric Christianity and recognizing that there is, in fact, tremendous and very powerful crossover between the original Stargate Metaphysics of the ancient Egyptians, the transfiguration teachings, and the transfiguration teachings of Christianity. So here, in this example here, we see the comparison of Tutankhamun's crown and that of Jesus in this transfiguration. We're talking about the ascension teachings encoded within the artwork of Tutankhamun tomorrow. For now, we're just making this connection that these ancient transfiguration teachings of Egypt crossed over generations and are now being taught as Christianity with the names changed. So another couple examples here of the transfiguration of Jesus where he's actually in the Egyptian hieroglyph for the Aku. Another important connection between Christianity and ancient Egypt is in the word Rosto. This is the original name for the Giza Plateau. The Sphinx is the guardian of Rosto, the gateway to the underworld. What we can see here is that Rosto is an anagram for Sta-Ro. This is the original word used for cross in the New Testament translation. The word Sta-Ro means pillar. And in fact, what we can see here is a very interesting correspondence between the three pyramids or crosses of Rosto and Christian art that portrays the entombment and resurrection of Jesus upon the Sta-Ro, the pillar. And what I'm equating here is the tomb of Jesus with the hill that has the three crosses on top of it. And the suggestion is made here that perhaps the three crosses of crucifixion could well be the three pyramids of Giza. That's a very controversial idea again, but when we follow the esoteric version of Christianity into Egypt, we're led to this speculation, this question that in fact, Rosto, the gateway to the afterlife, is in fact Sta-Ro, which is the gateway to the afterlife of Christianity. For now, we're going to turn our attention to Saqqara, one of the most powerful places in Egypt and one of the most revelatory places, in fact. Saqqara, of course, is well known as the home of the Stairway to Heaven, what is considered to be the oldest building in Egypt, the step pyramid of King Zoser, also called the Stairway to Heaven. Like the Great Pyramid, it too would have had the white facing stones upon it. All of those, of course, have been taken away and used in other building projects throughout Egypt. But Saqqara is a place of immense mystery and incredible energy. Many of you, I'm sure, who are present have been there and experienced the energies of this place for yourself. We first began to really look into the mysteries of Saqqara in the late 19th century when Gordon Maspero excavated Stargate Saqqara. In one of the complex's 9 pyramids, he discovered inscriptions known as the pyramid texts. These are the earliest software, if you will, that accompany the hardware of the pyramids. The ultimate subject matter of the pyramid text is the transformation of the pharaoh into a celestial or star being and his ability to access the portals of the afterlife. Etched upon the walls from 2375 to 2345 BC, they're considered the oldest religious texts in existence. And it's key to note that they likely existed in oral form before this time. Saqqara was sacred to the god Sokar, who is regarded as a manifestation of Osiris, the Egyptian god of resurrection in the afterlife, and Ptah, who is the first scientist, architect, magician, technologist, and the fashioner of the bodies of men. A key figure in our quest. We're going to be talking about Ptah today in some detail. And here in this statue, we see him as a combination of Ptah and Sokar, or Ptah and Osiris, rather. A most interesting pyramidion in the Egyptian Museum in Cairo shows Sokar standing on the symbol of Ma'at, or cosmic order, cosmic truth, standing in between two pillars with two goddesses or priestesses on either side who appear to be either beaming energy to him or receiving energy from him. Sokar is in the process here of translation. He is going to become like Enoch in the Old Testament, a translated man. He is, in other words, dematerializing in light as he stands in this gateway, is preparing to board the ship of eternity, or the ark of the millions of years. Now, Ptah is, as I said, our key figure in our quest here. As I noted, Egypt was called Kemet, or the Black Land, but later Egyptians referred to their country as the temple, or Ka, of Ptah, or more properly, the house of the Ka of Ptah, indicating that this is Ptah's dwelling place of his spiritual essence. It is also his house. And the business of Ptah is transformation. It's the business of transformation into light beings. From Budge's hieroglyphic dictionary, I pulled what I call Ptah's business card. Ptah, the architect of heaven and earth, the master craftsman in working metals, sculptor, designer, and the fashioner of the bodies of men. Wow, that's an extraordinary statement, and one that automatically just sends light bulbs going off. Take a look at Ptah's hieroglyph here. What do you see? To my imagination, I immediately see, I focus in on the coiled string that is obviously reminiscent of a double helix of DNA. Now, again, this is another of my kind of suppositions or connections that I've made that originally Egyptologists and guides used to just kind of scoff at. But now they're confronted with additional knowledge. Says, wait a minute, the ancient Egyptians may have had way more profoundly advanced science than Egyptologists are ever willing to give them credit for. And I just simply asked them, is it simple coincidence or what? That when we look at Ptah's hieroglyph, he's clearly got the double helix of DNA within it, and we are told that he is the fashioner of the bodies of men. It would make perfect common sense that as the fashioner of our body, or the crafter of the human body, that Ptah would have the double helix in his hieroglyph. Egyptologists say it's not a double helix, it's in fact a string. Well, how about a string of DNA? I'm going to just put my chips on the table and say Ptah knew about the secrets of DNA. What specific secrets did he implant within our DNA becomes our all-important question. And that answer to me, or that question is answered in this scene here from the tomb of Nefertari in the Valley of the Queens. The queen is wearing a transparent garment indicating that she's in a light body form, and she is in fact offering to Ptah the Egyptian hieroglyph for new clothes. The new clothes that she is indicating to Ptah that she has attained is her light body garment, her afterlife garment that will enable her to access the afterlife world. One of the terms for that afterlife garment is the crossed body. It's spelled K-R-A-S-T, and is in fact the light body of the ancient Egyptian gods, including Ptah, who is portrayed here in his mummified form, wearing the crossed garment, or the garment of light. Behind him is a multicolored Tet or Jed pillar that represents the backbone of Osiris, but also is a key symbol of the ladder or stairway to heaven. The combination of Ptah in his crossed garment with the Tet pillar says that he is a fully empowered light being who can access the stairway to heaven. Osiris is portrayed here as Ptah, or wearing the crossed garment, the light body garment, which again is the object of the quest of the ancient Egyptians, is to acquire this shining garment, this radiant or light body, and become a splendorous one, to become a transfigured being or a transformed being. Here's another example. This happens to be from the Temple of Seti at Abydos, where the king Seti is offering the symbol of new clothes once again to Ptah, who sits enthroned. Here Ptah is wearing the crossed garment enfolded within the wings of Mot, indicating that he's in divine or cosmic order. It's been speculated that Ptah's blue skull cap is thought to symbolize Sirius, the star system that he is most closely associated with, and is thought actually to originate it from. Ptah brought with him his Uaz, Ankh, and Jed staff that we see here runs the length of his body. He wears a tight-fitting garment that's covered with feathers, and his feet are bound like those of Osiris. This statuette was actually discovered in the tomb of Tutankhamun, and to me is one of the most powerful statues in all of ancient Egypt, or of all the imagery or art that we've recovered from ancient Egypt. I believe that he holds his staff, his combined Uaz, Ankh, and Jed staff, close to his body, because it's saying his body is this instrument. This is a concept we're going to just put on the table here and continue to develop in tomorrow's presentation and also on Sundays. But here in the detail, we see Ptah wearing this feathered cloak, indicating that he is an ascended being or capable of ascension, and he holds close the Uaz, Ankh, and Jed symbol, the instruments of his power. Another thought-provoking image of Ptah is this one from the Harris Papyrus. We see Ptah in the center, again standing on the symbol of Mot or cosmic order. We see his consort, Sekhmet, standing beside him, and behind her is Nefertiti, who is actually their son. But for the moment, I'm keen on Ptah's tight-fitting feather garment and also his combined Uaz, Ankh, and Jed staff. Again, holding it close to his body, indicating that his body perhaps is this instrument. As I've been studying this image here, a couple of things became apparent. One, we're looking at the feathered cloak or garment again, indicating that flight as well as ascension. But in this example here, I'm particularly drawn to the spiraling energy form around his chest going on up into his neck. I've seen that spiraling before, and I'm going to show you where in just a moment. But here, looking at the feathered cloak in detail is helpful. Osiris also wears this same feathered cloak or garment, which in both instances it represents that they are ascended beings, that they are beings capable of coming and going from the stars and are in fact, their ascension body. Another example here of Ptah, also accompanied this time by God Thoth. Nice example here of this Uaz, Ankh, and Jed scepter, this instrument of ultimate power that symbolizes Ptah, but also power of Ptah, the power of transformation itself. And finally, another example here of Osiris in the tight-fitting shroud with the combined, with the Uaz scepter running the length of his body. At the base, we see what is known as the Heka symbol, which some people see a tuning fork, and I think that that's a fairly interesting connection to make, because ultimately what we're talking about here is this is an instrument or symbol of the soul's attunement with cosmic energies and at oneness with Ma'at, or divine order. I particularly like this example here, where we see the multicolored stick here, or the Uaz represented as a multicolored stick. Very, very powerful illustration of this symbolism. Ptah's consort, as I said, is Sekhmet. She's known as the Mighty One. And together they brought forth their son, called Nefertum, who is the lotus-born. Nice example here of Sekhmet from Medinet Habu, who is anointing Ptah. Their connection between the two has to be made and always has to be accounted for when we're talking about Ptah, because without Sekhmet, the mighty power, perhaps there is no Ptah as we know him. And in fact, this takes us to a very powerful chapel in Karnak. It's the Sekhmet Chapel, which is a place that we frequent when we go on tours, and is a place of incredible, incredible power. Here we see Ptah on one of the outer walls of the Sekhmet Chapel. We see the guardians here at the altar stone at the entranceway into the Sekhmet Chapel. I'm taking you on this slight diversion here because you can't possibly talk about ancient Egypt, in my opinion, or go to ancient Egypt without going to this very powerful Sekhmet Chapel at Karnak. It's about 5,000 years old, and this statue has been in the same enclosure all that time. It's a statue of immense power, and I've been in this chapel numerous times and have had personal experience with it, and have in fact been with people who have also had profound experiences. One of those people happens to be my wife Claire, who's here photographed with Sekhmet. And the thing about this is that her father had been in this very same chapel in 1922. He, along with his father, were guests of Lord Carnarvon for the opening of Tutankhamun's tomb. And Claire's father had incredible experiences at the opening of Tutankhamun's tomb. The quick backstory is that Claire's grandfather was good friends with Lord Carnarvon and was invited to be there for the opening. And they, of course, brought a camera with them, which was a kind of a rare thing at the time, and took some photographs while they were in the Sekhmet Chapel and also at the entranceway to Tutankhamun's tomb. These photos have never been published before and certainly never talked about. And Claire's family has actually worked with the British Museum and others to document their piece to the documentation of the opening of Tutankhamun's tomb. But what attracted me in particular to this photo, and Claire pointed this out to me just the other day, was not just the fact of her family continuity of being in this very same chapel about 80 years apart, or separated by 80 or 90 years, but in this example here, look at what we see on Sekhmet's shoulder. In this original photograph, we see what appears to my eyes to be a square portal, not just any square portal. When I looked at this photo, I went and got an image of a tesseract and superimposed it over, and it was a perfect match. And I looked at that and thought, oh, that's absolutely mind-blowing to me, that maybe her father just somehow captured some kind of a symbol that was present at that moment that certainly was not able to be seen by the naked eye. Because when you look at images of this statue of Sekhmet, there's clearly not a tesseract etched onto the wall. This brings up a very powerful example in my view of what happens when you're in Egypt, is that cameras start to pick up things, especially digital cameras, and that seem to be able to tap into a frequency beyond our vision. But the thing is that Claire's father wasn't using a digital camera. He was using a fairly archaic camera. So what gives here? What's this about? And the conclusion that I finally came to is that it's about the people themselves. When we go into these temples, we're interacting with them. They are spiritually active, all of these places. And each of these places hold a memory or a record, perhaps. And it's been expressed to me that these temples read our energy field sort of like the way a debit card reader reads our debit cards. We walk through the temples, we cross over the enclosures, and the temples swipe us like debit cards and say, oh, yes, it's you, I remember you, and I've got something more to show you, or you're ready to continue your teaching. And Egypt then offers up something to you in this way. It's why we call it magical Egypt, because literally the place is alive. The temples are alive. And each of us are able to have our own individual experiences and as well as group experiences. For example, here, another experience we had in the Sekhmet Chapel was with this extraordinary light show. Now, these photos have been analyzed by professionals who say, well, it's perhaps just, an anomaly from a digital camera. And that's a possibility, but still, many who see these images are open to the possibility that what we're looking at here is actually these temples interacting with us, engaging with us, not just on a spiritual level, but also manifesting through modern technology to us and illuminating for us what is actually going on inside these temples and inside these chapels. In this example here, some see a clear outline of a physical being with arms extending and hands that are, in fact, perhaps anointing or illuminating the figure, the woman who is standing in front of Sekhmet. I share those photos with you just because they're fun, but also because they point to this crossover aspect of ancient Egypt. You never know what you're going to get when you're there or what you're going to be able to see, feel, or otherwise experience. But getting back to our conversation about Ptah, the ultimate experience that we want as an ancient Egyptian and even a modern quester in Egypt is to come face to face with Ptah, as King Seti is doing here. Seti at his temple at Abydos is in the sycamore tree, and he is kneeling before Ptah, who is on his feathered throne. It is, in fact, writing the secrets of eternity into the palm of Seti's hand. This is symbolic of the ultimate initiation. And this is what we ask for when we are studying ancient Egypt. We are literally asking that these illuminated beings, these shining beings, come into our own energy field, our spiritual awareness, and illuminate us with this cosmic knowledge. That's part of the interaction here, the exchange. We are going to Egypt. We are offering ourselves to these gods as servants of the light, as servants of the cosmos. And we are here to awaken ourselves so that we can awaken all of humanity and reconnect us with the cosmic waterways. This is a really delicate little image here of Ptah. It's actually only about 2 inches high in actuality. It's made of gold. Ptah is shown here made of blue lapis with his Uaz, Ankh, and Jet scepter, again running the length of his body. Just goes to show us that the Egyptians were masters of the very big, massive scale, like the pyramids, but also were masters of the very small. Were able to create some astounding jewels and jewelry. This image is actually what inspired the cover of my book, Star Walkers and the Dimension of the Blessed, which is about the ancient Egyptian star walking traditions and the star walkers themselves. Again, Mr. Dana Augustine created this imagery based on these images of Ptah. Always loved this book cover and always appreciated working with Dana because I think he had a way of illuminating or visualizing the ancient Egyptian mysteries as if he had been there. And I continue to applaud Dana's work and thank him for helping us to kind of visualize this experience of connecting with these gateways in ancient Egypt and also the star beings or celestial beings. The very key point that we have to make about Ptah, absolute connection that unlocks, in my opinion, the ancient Egyptian Stargate metaphysics, is that not only was Ptah responsible for fashioning the bodies of men, in other words, for fashioning the human body, but Ptah was also given credit for crafting the Ark of the Millions of Years, or the ship of eternity. Now, wait a minute. This is, to me, a connection we really want to stop and talk about, because it raised, in my mind, a question. If Ptah created or fashioned the human body, did he implant within our DNA then something, knowledge, or the ability to transform, that enables us to become a celestial being and ride the ship of eternity, the Ark of the Millions of Years, for eternity as celestial beings? That's my open-ended question. And of course, my belief is I answer that yes, emphatically yes. And the reason why I want to take you down this path is because it's widely acknowledged that Ptah is equated with the Sumerian god Enki. I mentioned the work of Zecharia Sitchin earlier, and many will be familiar with Enki from Sitchin's works and his elucidation of the ancient Sumerian mysteries and indeed the ancient Egyptian mysteries. Sitchin surmised that Enki, Ptah, came to Earth in search of gold and fashioned the bodies of men as a slave race in order to mine gold from Earth. Well, if you go down that path, it's going to lead you in a particular direction that ultimately asks you to think that humanity is in fact a slave species to these gods. And indeed, many do uphold that premise, that humans are a slave species of the Anunnaki. But as I started to look at this, something didn't make sense. At the same time that Sitchin proclaimed Enki the master craftsman who crafted the human body, he also told us that Enki, Ptah, was the original god of metallurgy and alchemy. Well, now wait a minute. If this is the god of alchemy and has the ability, presumably then, to transmute lead or other base metals into gold, then why did these god beings need to come to Earth to mine gold? Why not just transmute a hunk of space rock out in space alchemically? So I had to offer a different path, another way of looking at this. If they're not here for gold, then why are they here? Well, what were these celestial or star beings coming to Earth for? What was so important about this planet that they had to come here? And the answer that arose in my mind is that, alchemically speaking, gold and souls are interchangeable. The transmutation of lead into gold is a metaphor for the perfection or transmutation of an impure soul into a pure soul. Well, with that realization, a new way of looking at this whole story opened up for me. What if these gods didn't come here for gold? They most certainly mined gold and utilized it. What if their primary mission was to come here for souls? What if Ptah, Enki, and these other celestial beings came to Earth and set up these massive temple complexes as schools for souls to learn the craft of transmuting the human body into light, preparatory to sailing the craft of the gods, the ship of eternity, the wormholes or stargates of eternity, as light beings? That's my fundamental premise. This is what I deduced from this study, and this is the pathway that opened up for me. And I'm asking you to follow me along that path, because I think what you will see is that it will take us to the place we want to go. to connection with these beings and the ultimate purpose for why they were here. So back to our image here of the resurrected Osiris as Orion on his ship of eternity. It was Ptah who crafted this ship and that holy stick in Osiris's hand, that magic stick that opens the gateway or the wormhole. So again, a modern depiction of the wormhole and a comparison between Osiris, the resurrected Osiris as Orion, sailing upon that ship as a celestial or star being. I believe that what we're talking about here is the actual reason that these gods came here. And that was to show us the way to transmute the human body into light in order for the souls of the earth, or the souls that are on earth, to ascend to the heavenly realms, to return to the field or dimension of the blessed. We just talked here for a moment about this magic stick or holy stick in the hand of Osiris here. It's called the Uaz scepter, and it's the symbol of the god Seth. French symbolist and alchemist Schwaller de Lubitz described it as a living branch conducting the unmanifest vivifying sap or nourishing sap. This sap, or maybe an oil, he says, is resonant with the Christian word, the life force energy upon which the world is built. One could surmise that this branch is made from this higher vibrational energy, this life force energy. And that's exactly what I believe is being described here or encoded at one level, is that we are seeing the resurrected Osiris as Orion on the ship of eternity with his magic stick in his hand that conducts this magic force. What could that magic force be? What is this life force energy? Well, one answer that has been presented to me is that we're talking about dark matter or negative matter. In order to open the mouth of a wormhole, we are told we need a particle accelerator that can create this negative matter that can open the mouth of the wormhole. Well, what if it's possible here? And I sound like ancient aliens. I'm just putting this out as speculation because there's no proof of this, but I'm going to show you some very interesting corroborating evidence that suggests that what we're in fact looking at here with this magic stick is some form of a particle accelerator. It creates this negative matter that can open the mouth of the wormhole. Presently, we have two types of particle accelerator, rods and rings. Our ring accelerators, such as the one at CERN near Geneva, is 17 miles in diameter. Our rod or linear accelerators, such as the one at Stanford, are about a mile long. And these accelerators will enable us, hopefully one day, to create that negative matter or dark energy. What if it's possible that these ancient Egyptian god beings, these celestial beings, led by Ptah, the super advanced being, have handheld particle accelerators that could create this life energy that opens the mouth of the wormhole? What if theirs are a mile long or 17 miles in diameter? What if they're 4 or 5 feet long and they hold them in their hand? That would mean that this Uaz scepter is the ultimate ascension staff, or UAS, but it's also the ultimate power tool possessed by these gods. Taking it one step forward, I think that they're ultimately trying to show us that our body itself is that particle or soul accelerator, because our soul is viewed as a divine spark or particle that's also, of course, viewed as a wave. So ultimately, taking this imagery to its ultimate extension, just brainstorming with it, is telling us that the ancient Egyptian gods may have possessed this super advanced technology of being able to open wormholes and travel wormholes, but also, once taking it one step forward, they knew how to transform their bodies themselves into these wormholes. As Laird Scranton observed in his book, The Science of the Dogon, two Egyptian words fundamentally related to Ptah are pet, which means spacious, and pet, which means to tear. Laird compares the diagram of the tearing of space-time and the opening of a wormhole from Brian Greene's groundbreaking book, The Elegant Universe, with the Egyptian hieroglyph to tear. Now, this is a good one, in my opinion. I mean, this is either just completely out there coincidence, or it's taking us back to the fundamental sacred science of the gods, something we are rediscovering today. We are learning how to tear a hole in the fabric of space-time and travel interdimensionally. The image on the left is from science.com. It shows a tear in the fabric of space-time and the opening of a wormhole that links Earth with Alpha Centauri, our nearest star system, which happens to be 20 million miles away. It would take us 75,000 years to travel to Alpha Centauri in a conventional rocket ship. It would take 2 weeks to travel there in a warp craft. Through a wormhole, we might be able to do it a whole lot sooner than that. And so what I'm suggesting here is that here is another glyph that corresponds to the idea of the wormhole and tells us that maybe the ancient Egyptian hieroglyphic system, the sacred symbols of the Egyptians, ultimately refer to how we open holes in the fabric of space-time. It's also interesting that the tear glyph also resembles a thong and a tuning fork. Remember, a lot of this is about vibration. It's about attuning ourselves with the divine forces, becoming one with Ma'at, one with the divine mind, and then being able to open these holes in space. Depictions of the starboats, the celestial craft, the wormholes are found in numerous temples and tombs of ancient Egypt. And one of my favorite places to discover this imagery is Esna. It's presently not on many tourist itineraries. Esna has been a place where there's been some outbreaks of violence, even involving tourists, so it's typically not on the tourist itineraries. So I was very happy to be able to have visited Esna in 2008 when I took these photos. So here we are going into the entrance to Esna. It's a Greco-Roman temple, which means it was built between 100 BC and the time of Jesus. In fact, it would have been brand new at the time of Jesus and Mary Magdalene. Inside, we see these powerful, powerful lotus columns. It's almost like you're in the forest of papyrus stalks, which is what these columns represent. These papyrus columns are actually lotus stalks. And we're supposed to imagine ourselves in a field of lotuses or the papyrus fields. Now, this is interesting because the dimension of the blessed that we're trying to access in the afterlife is symbolized by the papyrus field. And so actually, as we enter this temple, we're entering a symbolic representation of the field or dimension of the blessed. Something funny that happened as I was looking at my photos and preparing this presentation was some of them were put sideways in my photo program. I thought, wow, that's kind of an interesting way of looking at these columns. Let's just play with that a bit. Why don't we turn them upside down? And we see that, okay, now we're looking at the top of the column, but it's now portrayed as the base here, these lotus columns. And as I'm looking at this, I'm thinking, now that's a really interesting shape, because what the temples are ultimately trying to do is to connect heaven and earth. The earthly temples are mirror images of something going on in the heavens. And as we enter the temples, we're attempting to enter into the heavenly realms. So I thought it was kind of fun just to take our wormhole symbol, the opening of the mouth of the wormhole, and slip it over our lotus stalks here, and notice that there's an interesting correspondence. In fact, one interpretation of the word lotus is gate. So, in fact, these lotus columns are symbolic of gateways. And, of course, as I said, that is the purpose of the temples, is to act as gateways or connecting places between heaven and earth. Here's a detail of one of these lotus columns at Esna. Features the grapevine symbolic of course, the tree of life, indicating that these columns are, in fact, the tree of life. And then here's the wormhole superimposed again. Just for fun. I mean, this is highly speculative, but it's also kind of a fascinating speculation, I feel, because as we continue our exploration here of the ceiling of Esna, we're treated to some of the most fantastic, I think, depictions of the gods on the ship of eternity. And that's what we're going to explore here now. We see Ptah in his sacred enclosure aboard one of the arcs of the millions of years. Beside him, we see Osiris preparing to be resurrected. He is in his crossed body or body of light. It's resting on the wormhole-shaped ship. Underneath him, we see stars, and we see the two awakened eyes. Easily, or especially captivating, is the two awakened eyes and the wormhole symbols together. And I take this as a sign that we're waking up to the meaning of the wormhole-shaped boats of the gods, and we're attaining that awakened consciousness. Again, Ptah, as Osiris, is upright on his boat. He holds the combined Ankh, Jed, and Uaz symbol in his hand. And here I've labeled this the key to the Milky Way, because that's what I believe we're actually dealing with in this symbolism. Here is Sekhmet, who's star surfing at Esna. And again, where we see Ptah, we often are going to see Sekhmet. And here another example of this Egyptian initiate here riding upon the ship of eternity, receiving the star energy from these priestesses and demonstrating the ability to surf. Another fun example here where we see the Pharaoh, and this is also Isis present, surfing on these star boards or craft, and they're actually intertwined here. I think that's a neat connection to make, is that it shows that this is the crossing over of these star boats, and showing that, in my opinion, that in fact they are entwined beings here, that as we come into this ascended realm, we're not only able to cross over other realms, but also to interconnect dimensions and also star systems. I want to open up a chapter now called The Perfect Ones, because this is, again, the ultimate objective of the ancient Egyptian Stargate Metaphysics. And quick anecdotal story, what happened in my journey is around 2007 or so, it might have been 2006, 2007, I was at a conference, and a really lovely couple came up to me and introduced themselves, and they told me that they both had PhDs from the Harvard Divinity School, that they were experts in ancient Tibetan metaphysics, especially the rainbow body. And in this belief, they told me that the Tibetans believed that the human body was fashioned, crafted, or designed, my terms, to be spun into a vortex of energy that ultimately manifests as five-colored rainbow light, or what the Tibetans refer to as the rainbow body. This teaching is called the Great Perfection, and is the ultimate aim of the Tibetan metaphysics and spiritual system. This couple told me further that this Great Perfection tradition didn't come from Earth, that in fact it was taught in 13 star systems, including our own. And as our conversation progressed, they asked me, hey, are you aware of the rainbow body? And I said that I wasn't. They said that's really interesting, because your work on the ancient Egyptian Stargate Metaphysics answers for us a question that the Tibetans wouldn't answer about the rainbow body, or perhaps couldn't answer because it was secret, or maybe they just didn't know the answer. And the question is that after they are able to dissolve their bodies into rainbow light, which, by the way, leaves behind only hair, toe, and fingernails, which have no nerves to be transmuted, the Tibetans teach that these rainbow body beings can then travel to these other 13 star systems. And what this couple wanted to know was, how do they get there? And again, the Tibetans wouldn't answer the question because they couldn't, because it was secret, or they didn't know it. But they said they were one day watching my presentation on Star Walkers in the Dimension of the Blessed and reading my book, and the answer became clear to them. And that is, that based upon the Egyptian original, that once these beings attain the rainbow body, their body then becomes the wormhole, just like Osiris as Orion surfing the stars as a wormhole, or on a wormhole. And then that became the answer for them, that our bodies can transform into the wormhole, and that this is how we travel the stars as stargates. And what this did is it set me off on a whole new direction of linking the ancient Egyptian Stargate metaphysics with the Tibetan concept of the body and its ability to morph into a perfected light body called the rainbow body. There's like no literature out there that connects the Tibetan and the Egyptian traditions. But based on the idea that they're both talking about the same thing, about the body being able to become a wormhole or be transformed into a form capable of traveling via wormhole, I tentatively set off making that connection and developing my own literature that links the Tibetan and the Egyptian tradition. One of the key connecting links for me is that the passion of Osiris is reflected in his name. His resurrected name is Winnenefer, the one who continues to be perfect, which also alludes to his post-mortem or afterlife power. Osiris is known as the perfected one to the ancient Egyptians. And as I noted earlier, he wears the crossed garment, the light body garment that was crafted by Ptah. In this example here, from the Valley of the Queens, we see Osiris in his light body garment sitting on his feathered throne, indicating it's an ascension throne. Not only that, but we see this swirling mass of energy on his headpiece, his Atep crown, and also the concentric rings around his neck. As I was looking at that, I thought, well, wait a minute. What if the Egyptians and the Tibetans are saying the same thing? And what if their ascension teachings came from the same extraterrestrial source? It sounds highly speculative, but I think I'm going to be able to build for you a very good case that says that that's exactly what's going on. Why don't the Tibetans teach this? Why don't they know this? Why don't the Egyptologists teach this? Why don't they know this? Part of my answer is that maybe there's maybe a metaphysical time lock on this information. That there are times when this knowledge begins to flourish and to become abundant, and there are times when it goes into a dormant phase. And maybe we're entering now into a phase where this knowledge is going to flourish once again. I happen to be talking with an author many of you will be familiar with, Greg Braden. We had a conversation about this very subject in London back in August. I was talking with him about the rainbow body and asking Greg if during his expeditions to Tibet, he's explored the rainbow body. And he said he had just a little bit, and but not a lot in detail. And he told me about a conversation he had with some Tibetan lamas on one of his expeditions to Tibet. And they told Greg that the reason why the Tibetans don't have a lot of this knowledge is that they have lost it. And in fact, they are waiting for us as the ones to come back and tell them what this symbolism means. And I think that's in part what's happening here, is that we are the ones who are able to make these connections, and we'll be the ones who will be able to go back to not only the Tibetans, but the Egyptians to say, hey guys, we've got some new information for you here about ultimately how what these God beings, these celestial beings were teaching us, and its ultimate meaning for us today. And this, to me, is the great excitement that I have about going back to Egypt and working with the Egyptians and making these connections to these other traditions, because that's, to me, what we're doing is reclaiming this original teaching. As it happened in my case, after that couple first awakened me to the rainbow body and its connection to my work on on ancient Egypt, I went home and started really feverishly looking at this artwork and trying to make some additional connections. And the couple ended up coming to another of my presentations a couple months later, where I showed this connection here between Osiris and the Tibetan rainbow body image. And they were in the audience when I showed it, and they just broke out laughing. They were so excited because they said, wow, the Tibetans never make this connection. They never show this, and this is absolutely on the money. And there was no question to them that when we're seeing Osiris in his resurrected form as the perfected one, then it's exactly the same meaning as what the Tibetans are trying to convey when they show their lamas having attained the great perfection or the rainbow body. And ultimately, my message is that, or hypothesis, is that the ability to transform into a perfected being of light is the knowledge that was implanted within our DNA by Ptah, or whatever name we choose to give to this celestial being who came to Earth, possibly from Sirius, or likely from Sirius, the star system Sirius, and fashioned or crafted the human body. It was fashioned or crafted by these celestial beings in order to become a conduit for the soul, in order to transform the physical body into a wormhole, and then that wormhole becomes the ship of eternity that we ride as celestial beings for eternity. So my present work continues to be about making this connection between the star body of the ancient Egyptians, the perfected body of Osiris, and the perfect body or great perfection of Tibet. On the right here is a photo I took in the tomb of Seti I, another tomb that's not often open to tourists anymore. But we were able to get private time in the tomb of Seti I, and that's where I took that photo. So what I'm seeing here is, again, this clear connection between Ptah as this genetic craftsman who fashioned the body of man to manifest the rainbow body. And so when I see Ptah on the left in his feathered cloak or garment, his cloak of many colors, in other words, with this swirling pattern of energy around his chest, I'm absolutely equating it now with the Tibetan rainbow body images and saying that they're interchangeable. This was why the ancient Egyptian god beings came here. Attaining the perfect light body or rainbow body is what the ancient Egyptian schools were all about. This is the purpose of the temples. This is why the ancient Egyptians were so obsessed with the idea of transformation. And ultimately, this is the secret that manifested in the Christian mysteries, because the resurrection body or glory body that Jesus attains in his resurrection is the very same as the crossed body of Osiris. And now we have a complete connection that we can make here. Another very interesting connection was made for us by Master Cho. Some will be familiar with his books, especially this one here on the Blue Pearl and the Golden Lotus. Let me put this up here on the screen where you can actually see it. I highly recommend this book by Master Cho. The actual title of the book is Om Mani Padme Hum, the Blue Pearl and the Golden Lotus. And in this book, he makes this extraordinary connection for us that Padmasambhava, who taught the rainbow body teaching to the Tibetans, and Ptah are the same being reincarnated. Now, that's really extraordinary to me if it's true. And I don't have a way of absolutely concretely saying that Ptah and Padmasambhava are the same, but based on what I've shown you, it makes absolute sense to me. As Master Cho says, the famous religious master Padmasambhava brought the rainbow body teaching to Tibet at the end of the 8th century. The Tibetans believe he drove out demons and the enemies of Buddhism. He's here seated on a lotus throne wearing the rich robes of a prince. He holds a thunderbolt in his hand. In his left hand is a vase containing a magic potion of everlasting life. That's the cosmic sap of Osiris that we saw a moment ago. And I think we can equate the thunderbolt of Padmasambhava with the Uaz scepter of Ptah, which is the conductor of that life force or radiant energy that also produces the sap or oil life. So thank you to Master Cho for making this extraordinary leap or connection between Padmasambhava, the teacher of the rainbow body, and Ptah Masambhava, or just simply Ptah of ancient Egypt. So now what we're going to do is we're going to take a further journey to Saqqara, the place of Ptah, the place where Ptah, the business of Ptah, met the practical spirituality of the ancient Egyptians. We're looking here at the entrance to Saqqara. It's corporate, it's Atlantean, it's eternal. And love to visit this place and see this incredible enclosure wall, this exterior enclosure wall to the stairway to heaven at Saqqara. When you visit the museum at Saqqara, as I have done many times, and here we are looking at the corridors that we were greeted by after we enter the external closure wall, the entry hall at Saqqara. Magnificent portals are still there for us, activation temple or portals, if you will. Tuners, tuner chapels is the way some people refer to them, that when you stand in this hallway, you're actually being tuned by these columns in preparation for coming face to face with the stairway to heaven at Saqqara. What we see here is Saqqara with this ceremonial center. This is where the famous Heb-Sed festival took place. These two areas here were built many years apart. The stairway to heaven comes first, and then the Heb-Sed festival is built much later. The two actually go hand in hand, as we're going to see here. Powerful, powerful energy that you feel when you're at this place. A favorite thing that we like to do when we're at Saqqara is sit inside these portals that you see here, these little kind of cubby holes or cupboards, if you will. Incredible sound vibration that comes from deep within the earth can be felt and heard resonating when you're in these little portals that, again, are tuners here that at one time likely held statues or other temple relics. This is my wife Claire standing at the entrance to one of these chapels. That the energy is palpable, and you see it reflected in the imagery all around the enclosure wall, including the Tet pillars or the Jed pillars, which symbolize power. I mean, we talk about the Giza power plant and the Giza pyramid as a power plant, but what kind of power is it manifesting? Is it radiating? Well, that power is symbolized by the Tet pillar, the backbone of Osiris, and they're thought of as generators or tuners of this cosmic energy that's manifested by the pyramid, that ultimately is found resonating here at Saqqara. Some people look at it and say, hey, it looks like an upside-down speaker. And I think that's an interesting correspondence to make, because these pyramids are, in fact, tuners of this cosmic energy. And what we see happening here at Saqqara is something called the Heb-Sed festival. This is a festival in which the pharaoh, a ritual festival in which the pharaoh would begin to embody this cosmic energy. And this is the point of the building of the ceremonial center at Saqqara. It was for these coronation ceremonies where the king was believed to be transformed into a falcon, would fly up into heaven, and there would have a vision of Amun-Ra, and was infused then with God's spiritual power and assimilated himself into the wisdom of the gods. The texts that accompany this make this absolutely clear that he, Amun-Ra, opened for me the doors of heaven and unfolded the gates of the Akhet, a place of spiritual transformation and transfiguration. I rose to heaven as a divine falcon and saw his secret image in heaven. I worshipped his majesty. I was infused with all his Akh power, his luminous spiritual power, and instructed in the wisdom of the gods. Aket is the name, of course, of Khufu, whose name was given to the pyramid as this power generator. But the point I'm making here is that this place, Saqqara, was all about putting ourselves in touch with this divine power of this and attaining the wisdom of the divine beings. And the key figure that we want to talk about now in connection with this place is its builder, its architect, Imhotep, and what he knew about this spiritual power and what he did with this incredible spiritual power. So let's get acquainted briefly here with Imhotep. He is shown here holding this open roll or scroll on his lap, and we see the penetrating gaze, and we see this incredible ornateness of the collar around his neck here. Imhotep was a commoner by birth. His name means the one who comes in peace. He's thought of as an ancient Egyptian Leonardo da Vinci. He was the vizier or wizard to the pharaoh and the high priest of the sun god at Heliopolis. Significantly, Imhotep was called the son of Ptah, and he is the first human engineer, architect, and physician in the history of humanity who is known by name. So here we are dealing with the son of Ptah and this great mystic, visionary, and genius who is credited with building the stairway to heaven at Saqqara. He also coined the saying, "Eat, drink, and be merry, for tomorrow we shall die." What we're keying in on here is, in fact, Imhotep's feathered throne. This is a bit of symbolism that's almost always overlooked in discussions about Imhotep. They focus on him as this great architect. They focus on him as this great first medical doctor, and the combination of how his knowledge about medicine and knowledge about architecture met at Saqqara. But again, often overlooked is his feathered throne. What exactly does that feathered throne mean, and why is Imhotep portrayed sitting on this throne? Well, the answer is that the other world, the other dimensional world, was envisioned as a dome that covered the earth and was supported by 4 pillars. One could enter the realm of the gods by means of a ladder or by the pharaoh's throne, which could rise up and fly. In this example here, we are seeing Osiris on his feathered throne. And what we're to take from this is that this feathered throne is in fact symbolic of Osiris's ascension vehicle. And showing the feathered throne is a shorthand way of simply saying this is an ascended being or a being who knows about ascension. So when we see Imhotep on his feathered throne, we have to equate it with the feathered ascension throne of Osiris and say that when we're seeing Imhotep on the feathered throne, it means that he too is on the path of ascension, or his life work is actually about ascension. So this feathered throne then is again a symbol that's often overlooked, but is absolutely profound in its significance, because it's, again, the shorthand way of saying that we're dealing with ascended beings, beings who have the ability to travel the stars as light beings. We saw the feathered throne earlier in this image of Seti being initiated by Ptah, or having the secrets of eternity written into the palm of his hand by Ptah, who's on the feathered throne. There are numerous examples of these feathered thrones, be it in the Egyptian Book of the Dead or on the walls of the temples. And there's no question that this is the primary symbol of the ascension teachings of the ancient Egyptian celestial beings. It goes hand in hand with the wormhole symbolism. And this is why it's so important for us to make this connection here in the statuette of Imhotep. Here, by the way, is another simple example of that feathered throne on the lotus ship, or the ship of eternity. And a question that arises in my mind that I'll pose again here is, which came first? Did the ancient Egyptians start making their lotus boats because they had somehow visualized the cosmic symbol of the wormhole? I mean, that sounds like a really far out idea, but in my opinion, the wormhole symbol of modern science is the ultimate cosmic symbol. The symbol of the wormhole is what connects us to the universe, and it connects the universe to itself. So is it possible, or is it simple coincidence, that the shape of the earthly ship matches the shape of the cosmic ship? Which came first? Seems to me that the shape of the cosmic ship came first, and the reason why we make our earthly ships in this shape, or why the ancient Egyptians did, is because it's a reflection, a mirror image of the heavenly ship. So here we see all of our symbolism coming together here in this image from Dendera, where we see the Pharaoh on the ship of eternity, sitting upon his feathered throne, holding in his hand the key of life and the Uaz scepter of Set. To me, this is one of the ultimate examples of all of this ancient Egyptian Stargate symbolism. It brings it all together in one place for us and tells us, hey, this is our ultimate objective, is to learn how to sail for eternity as a celestial being upon the Ark of the Millions of Years, or the Ship of Eternity. Later, this Ark of the Millions of Years, or throne symbolism, became part of Jewish mysticism. The divine throne chariot has found its way into the story of Ezekiel and the book of Revelation, where in Jewish mysticism it's called the Merkava throne, the divine chariot, and is supported and drawn by cherubim, which is at the same time a throne and the vehicle. What we're seeing here is that the transposition of the ancient Egyptian Stargate metaphysics into Jewish Stargate metaphysics. When Elijah ascends into the heavens in a whirlwind aboard his throne, he is Osiris ascending into the heavens. Elijah is in fact shown transmitting to his priest Elisha his holy garment, which I equate with the cross garment, the symbol, the light body symbol, or symbol of our light body, the symbol of our transformation. And so here in the detail, you see Elijah on his winged throne transmitting that garment. It's the exact same story that we see in ancient Egypt. Another example of Elijah in his winged throne, his celestial vehicle, his Merkava throne. This is simply a retooled version of the ancient Egyptian knowledge. And of course, what happened is that Jesus then receives his garment of light from John the Baptist, who it is claimed is the reincarnated Elijah, and then Jesus himself rides into the heavens on his Merkava throne. In this example here, this is from a Coptic Egyptian church, 4th century AD. We see Jesus ascending on his winged throne, which is his Merkava vehicle. And this is the early Christian way of showing this ancient Egyptian Stargate metaphysics, where instead of Osiris on the winged throne or feathered throne, now it's Jesus as the God of resurrection who rides into the heavens on his feathered or winged throne. So in actuality, Imhotep on his winged throne and Jesus on his winged throne are telling exactly the same story. And in the closing minutes here, I just want to share with you that what's happened here at Saqqara is that this was the ultimate Stargate mystery school of the ancient Egyptians. In the museum at Saqqara, you will see this model of the original Saqqara complex with this mile-long enclosure wall surrounding the incredible stairway to heaven there, which again was originally covered with shiny white Tura limestone. And today we see only a fragments of what was originally there, but it's enough to give us a sense of what was actually happening at this extraordinary place. The Discovery Channel did a wonderful documentary about Saqqara a few years ago, where they created these wonderful graphics that show the shaft, the underground shaft leading beneath Saqqara, going into the tomb of Zoser. And what they showed is that there are, in fact, 3 miles of underground corridors that are cut out of solid rock that connect 400 subterranean rooms filled with everything from food to art to gold and jewels. Imagine this, 3 miles of tunnels underneath Saqqara. Imhotep created a complicated network of shafts, tunnels, chambers, galleries, and false doors to lead grave robbers away from the great riches and the one object that caused the entire pyramid complex to be built, the burial chamber of the pharaoh Zoser. So here's an actual photo of those tunnels cut underneath the bedrock of Saqqara that extend for miles out into the desert, going all the way over to the Giza Plateau. Many of these miles of corridors are covered with these galleries. It would be astounding if the Egyptians would open up these corridors, because we're talking about opening up corridors, not just beneath the temple at Saqqara. We're talking about opening up corridors of the human mind. We're talking about awakening the human mind and reclaiming what was brought to us here as a gift from the gods. Here we are looking down into the shaft going into Zoser's tomb. As I said, it goes down 90 feet, leading to a small granite burial chamber, which was closed by a granite lug weighing 3.5 tons. Inside the chamber lay the sarcophagus, and in the sarcophagus was a wooden coffin which contained the mummy. And it's here at the bottom of Zoser's tomb shaft that Imhotep, the architect, and Imhotep, the physician, converge. And this is what we need to be fully understanding at this time. How this ancient temple building converged with the building of the light body or the resurrection body. There is no evidence, by the way, that the king's body was buried in the pyramid at Saqqara. Rather, the only reliefs and inscriptions within the pyramid relate to his Sed festival. But scholars conclude that this is evidence that the pyramid was associated with the Sed festival, and it was used for some secret rites. The secret rites were about the transformation of the pharaoh into a celestial or a god being. The final piece that I want to talk about today involves Asclepius. Because what happened is that the ancient mysteries of Imhotep continued to go on for several thousands of years. Imhotep became so renowned that he was honored by the Greeks and the Romans. His Greek name was Asclepius, the god of healing and medicine. The emperors Claudius and Tiberius had inscriptions that praised him inscribed on the walls of their Egyptian temples. And at Saqqara, where his tomb is believed to be located, where Imhotep's tomb was believed to be located, and some believe they've actually located it, people brought offerings, including mummified ibises and clay replicas of diseased limbs and organs, firmly believing that they would be healed. Even the early Christians worshipped Imhotep as the Prince of Peace and equated him with Christ. So wait a minute. What we're talking about here is a continuous transmission of this teaching from the time of Imhotep in 2500 BC all the way up and including the time of Jesus and beyond. That's a 3,000-year period we're talking about here, where these resurrection teachings were active at this place. Now, a connection we want to make here is that Ophiuchus is the only constellation in the sky which is patterned after a real person in human history, tracing back through time and space with roots to Imhotep. He is the only human ever to be honored or have a constellation named after him. Ophiuchus is Imhotep, the serpent holder. Now, the thing here that we want to know is that the constellation Ophiuchus, the serpent holder, is the missing 13th zodiacal sign. It sits 180 degrees across from Orion, which is also called Osiris. The Greeks removed this sign because it represents the resurrection of the gods and ultimately the resurrection teachings of the gods. There are only two gates or entryways into Orion, we're told, one being the intersection between Taurus and Gemini, which is known as the Silver Gate of Heaven. The other is the intersection between Scorpio and Sagittarius, where Ophiuchus is located, and is known as the Golden Gate to Heaven. The center of our Milky Way galaxy lies visually from our solar system along a line that passes through this Golden Gate. And where this takes us to is ultimately that perhaps this ancient Egyptian knowledge was leading us beyond the 13 star systems of the zodiac, which correspond with the 13 star systems of the Tibetan rainbow body tradition. And they're pointing us to the galactic center as the location of the throne of these beings, the actual destination for our resurrected souls is to make it to the black hole at the center of the Milky Way galaxy, or Sagittarius A star rather. And we're going to conclude here with some of NASA's images of the center of the Milky Way galaxy and contemplate the possibility that this is the place where all of these ancient Egyptian teaching is ultimately leading. Did you not know, Asclepius, that Egypt is an image of heaven, or to be more precise, that everything governed and moved in heaven came down to earth and was transferred there? If truth were told, our land is the temple of the whole world. This is from one of the Gnostic Gospels that references Asclepius and reinforces the ancient Egyptian adage, as above, so below, and the belief that the temples were reflections of things that go on or events that transpired in the heavens. This is the key to the ancient Egyptian magic and of the entire system of traditional and modern magic, as believed, and may be the key to all the mysteries. As the Nag Hammadi library, or the text in the Nag Hammadi library, Asclepius tells us, or are you ignorant, Asclepius, that Egypt is the image of heaven? Moreover, it is the dwelling place of heaven and all the forces that are in heaven. And what we're being told here is that by going to these places, especially Saqqara, we're able to connect with the energies of Ophiuchus through these teachings of Imhotep and others. Moses, having lifted the serpent, the symbol of Asclepius, is certainly in this line. And so is Jesus, who was the Christian model for the transfiguration into the shimmering light being. Jesus tells us that, isn't it written in your law, I said you are gods? And he tells us in John 3:14 how to do this. As Moses lifted up the serpent in the wilderness, even so must the Son of Man be lifted up, so that whoever believes in him will have eternal life. The symbol of Jesus lifting the serpent, or as the serpent that is lifted, is exactly the same as the symbol of Moses lifting the serpent and the symbol of Asclepius, of the teachings of Imhotep, and shows for us this ultimate transmission or continuous transmission of these teachings from the earliest times of Imhotep through the time of Moses, through the time of Asclepius, all the way to the time of Jesus. And now today, we have the great honor of being able to continue this line of teaching and to work together to piece it back together. So that's my introductory presentation for today. I hope you've enjoyed it, and I will certainly look forward to spending some time now with you in discussion or answering any questions that you might have, or hopefully being able to clarify anything that you would like clarified. So thank you all very much.
Thank you so much, William. This was really, really excellent. It's amazing, just like with France, you know, the way that you were able to uncover or dive deep into these mysteries is really very special. And you're able to bring such a new perspective to us that these ancients left. It's really, really wonderful.
Well, thank you, Robin. And again, I think it's just kind of it's about reading the signs of our times and recognizing that the ancient Egyptians possessed a sacred science,
Mm-hmm.
and that's what we're trying to get back to, is making our world and our science more sacred. And the clear and simple message of the ancient Egyptians was that we could transform ourselves into stargates. And today we have the amazing luxury of being able to not only think about that as an abstract concept, but to recognize that science now understands how matter and energy are interchangeable. And we're beginning to develop a consciousness that says, hey, we can actually do this. And it's
Yes.
that consciousness that I think that gives us the fresh eyes and the ability to go back into these temples now and say, gosh, there's a whole nother level or layer of meaning encoded within this imagery that we haven't apprehended until now.
Yes. We have a question from Skylar. She says, your presentation suggests that perhaps this information is being kept from us. If so, why?
I think it has been kept from us for various reasons. Timing, I mean, it could be celestial timing. As I mentioned, I sometimes sense that there's a metaphysical time lock on this information.
Mm-hmm.
But ultimately, also, I mean, you're talking about there's always been the forces of light and the forces of darkness involved in these ancient cultures. And there's without question groups that do not want to see this knowledge become the base knowledge of our culture. You're talking about the ultimate power of the universe here, after all, and some people obviously aren't ready for that. And used in the wrong hands, it could absolutely be misused. So I feel like some of this is protected until such times when the knowledge can be widely disseminated. And I believe that now is one of those times.
Do you feel that if we could start, you know, as humanity, start spending more time in nature, start like developing our own relationship with the cosmos, even if it's something simple like going out every night and looking at the stars, connecting with the moon, that this would start to open us up to be able to access, you know, to be more in a position to access some of these ancient teachings?
Yeah, that's a wonderful question, Robin. And in fact, the ancient Egyptian gods were referred to as the netter, which some observe is actually the root of our word nature.
Ah.
So if we want to get to know the netter, then we want to nurture a relationship with nature, because it is all ultimately about becoming one with the cosmos. I mean, we look out in the stars and we see ourselves separate.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why we see vast distances. We see separation between us and other stars or star systems. But if we begin to see ourselves as a unity with all that we see, be it a simple grain of sand all the way up to a star or a star system, then we will be unified with it. And that's the ultimate adage, the Egyptian adage, as above, so below, as within, so without. When we look out into the stars or look into a leaf or walk by the ocean, we're actually seeing a reflection of ourselves. We are all, if we see ourselves at one with all, then we become an active, not only an active participant, but an active regenerator of all that is.
Wow, great. We have a question from Wendy. She would like to know, so are we to use these tools for ascension while we are alive and in our bodies now, or after death as in the resurrection of Jesus?
Well, no, we want to, and that's another very good question. The mystery schools always taught that we were able to do this while we were alive in the body. And that, in fact, we're able to, this is a really kind of wild but very powerful concept, that our body was not only crafted to be dissolved into the rainbow body or the perfect body of Ptah or Osiris or these other beings, but then also to be able to phase back and forth if we chose to. And that's just really kind of an amazing concept to contemplate, that that's what our body really is. But when we begin to start thinking about our body in this way, the key thing is that we start to live differently. I mean, today you talk with people about a perfect body, and they might, put up, the latest Playboy model or some actress or actor and say, yeah, they've got a perfect body, right? But actually, in this scenario, the perfect body is the light body. It's the body of the holiest ones, the whole ones, and that's the perfection that we want to begin to connect with. And by plugging into the symbolism, by following this path, that's in fact what we're doing.
Great. Don would like to know, do you have information about the plant-like symbol vibrations in the smaller square that I noticed as part of the feathered throne in your images?
No, usually it's a lotus that is shown there, which is the symbol of rebirth and regeneration. But I'll have to go back and take a look in more detail, and we'll try to do that before tomorrow's session.
Great. Okay. Elizabeth would like to know, what was the role of the pyramids for star travel? I have memories connected to that.
I'll never forget reading, I think it was must have been Robert Laval's book, The Message of the Sphinx, where he referred to the Great Pyramid as a transfiguration machine. And that really stuck with me. And especially as we talked in the opening of our presentation today, he called the pyramid the Aku, or place of light. And you recognize that Aku means the transfigured ones. Then that opens up automatically the connection that the pyramid is built as a transfiguration machine, as a device that creates a power that enables transfiguration or metamorphosis, a change in form. And there's all kinds of mystery school stories about initiates, for example, going into the King's Chamber of the Great Pyramid, spending 3 days in the sarcophagus there, and being dissolved into light, and then being spit out the star shafts of the pyramid. Those kinds of stories are very tantalizing to me, and suggestive that that's what we're dealing with there, among other purposes.
Wow, that's pretty exciting.
Yes. And I look forward to tomorrow. We're going to be talking about Tutankhamun and Akhenaten tomorrow, and their connection to these ascension teachings.
Wonderful.
Yeah. So once again, thank you all very much for being here today. It's been a pleasure to be with you.